Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Four Lads Had a Dream Weekend Rangers podcast. My name is Stevie Clifford, and in a disgusting turn of events, I'm being forced to host tonight because Andrew Anderson is refusing. So I'm sorry, everybody, you're stuck with me, but I am joined by the Dream Team, Andrew Kenny, and my good pal Calvin Nielsen, also joining us for our weekend podcast. The transfer window has slammed shut. I would love to say there was a hive of activity at Rangers Football Club, but there was not. And the biggest question over social media the last couple of days is, are we restructuring or are we downsizing? And that's the biggest thing. And we're going to debate it tonight. And there's a lot of point of view to this, folks. Nothing's right, nothing's wrong. But a little bit of background and context for this is probably needed. There's no doubt in my mind that in the last couple of years, we have squandered money left, right, and centre through a series of bad decisions. Wage bill is far too high. The wage bill was too high 3 years ago, and we've just built on that. There seemed to be a splurge of big contracts and big signings that haven't worked, or big signings that might have worked, but big contracts that mean that when we try and move them on or sell them or whatever, they're just stuck with the football club. Off the pitch, there's been too many moments, stadium, building of Edmondson House, too many wrong decisions with staff. Everything business-wise hasn't run smoothly, and that's just filtered its way down. Now, we're not here to pan anybody. The board at Rangers Football Club are all Rangers fans, and they all do what they think's best. But I think even now, they will admit that a series of decisions have been wrong, and they're trying to reverse that with the implementation of a new chairman, a new CEO, a new commercial manager, new people in the training ground, etc. So that's been a welcome turn of events. But in that, there's been a massive downsizing of the wage bill. We haven't brought anybody in of note in January, which we'll discuss. And the biggest thing that people are now asking is it a restructure or is it downsizing? Kenny, this isn't as simple as just saying it's one or the other. It's very complex, but at the same time, Rangers couldn't continue the way they were going. Something had to give.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that you could say it's both to a certain degree. You are seeing a downsize of sorts, but you are seeing a restructuring at the same time. So the reason for the downsize is literally because the wage bill was probably about £10 million too high, Stevie. And it was. I don't think there's any doubt of that. That there was an over bloated squad with a number of players not that we weren't getting value for money out of. I think behind the scenes it's been a little bit like that as well. So there's an old saying, Stevie, we all know it. It's don't run before you can walk. And I just feel, or I wonder if when we did win the league in 3 years back there, did the board themselves think, right, we are just going to push on? And as they tried to push on, did they start to make mistakes in just about every single department in terms of were Rangers as a business actually ready to take that full step? Or do you understand what I'm saying there? Did they actually try and push too far too quickly?
Yeah, did we try and force it?
That's what I mean. Yeah, and did we actually, as I say, literally run a wee bit too fast before we could actually walk properly? In regard to the business, I do genuinely feel that Edmondson House is a kind of perfect example of where you lose sight of what is actually the most important thing at a football club. The most important thing at a football club is always going to be your first team, Stevie, and to a certain degree, that and building Sky, the Sky Lounge and other suites and stuff like that had actually taken a precedent over what was to us the most important thing. And I think you lose a focus and stuff like that. Now, I'll pass it on to the other guys, but that would be my kind of short answer to it. Is I think you could actually, it's fair to say that it's probably both, that we are seeing a slight downsizing here, but for a good reason. And there is a definite restructuring. And I think the reason for the downsize is literally because you want to get that business model streamlined and moving properly, and then you can start to expand again. And I think that's probably where Rangers are at the minute, Stevie.
Calvin, we were always going to have to reset. When you throw as much at it as we have and make as many what has turned out to be decisions that the board made at the time for the best interest of the club but haven't worked out in the slightest. You're there, home and away. You are a foot soldier as such in the crowd. What's the atmosphere like? Because we've heard it and we've seen it. What's it like in it, and where does the fault lie in the eyes of the people that surround you on a match day?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear. A lot of people have got a lot of gripes with the board at the minute. And I think that comes down to, if you even just look at 3 years ago, players that had a chance to leave to make his money, they never did. And then if you look at it now, you just look at this budget in the summer, there's players there that probably should have made us X amount of £1 million. And what did we get? Less than £1 million for it all. So probably footballing department in terms of that. But did we really have a well-run footballing department where the board stepped in and kind of did their own thing? So I'd say a lot of it right now, you've seen it the past couple of months, the board's taking a lot of slack, but there is changes happening now. And it is looking like it's happening for the better. And that's what it's coming down to, the streamlining and downsizing right now. But it had to be done. We look at the wage structure right now, it had to be done.
It was never going to be easy though, Calvin.
No.
I think that's one of the things, that we're not the most patient. And I'm the world's worst for this. I hold my hands up for it because I'm like, I give players 5 minutes before I decide whether or not they'll make it or not. You've known me for 10 years, mate. So what I'm trying to say is that this was never ever going to be easy, and perhaps to go through this, thanks to those wrong decisions, this isn't a building up of this situation, but it was probably going to get really worse before it got any better. And if you look at it logically, Calvin, in the summer, you've still got Dowell, Matondo, Ben Davies, Yanis Hadji, Tom Lawrence, Leon Balogun, the 3 of them out of contract, the 3 previously will be returning. They're all on big money. Then you look at the likes of Cyril Dessers, who's got a value, Ridvan Yilmaz, who's got a value, and there maybe you could chuck in another couple. This is going to be a big turnover again. In order to try and streamline that, if you look at the likes of, say, your Yefties and your Igamans and even Robin Proper and people like that who come in last year who are on better contracts, and I've told people this, if you go and try and sell Robin Proper now, you won't have the same issues that you are with Ben Davies, because Robin Proper's on a good contract where we can sell him. And when teams come in from Holland, they'll look at that and go, well, he's not on 30 grand. He's on a wage we can afford. And he's not an asset. That's not the right word. But he becomes sellable again. And he'll be inviting, whereas the players we had before aren't. That could happen with regards to a big turnover again in the summer. And at the same time, Egaman, Jeffy, etc., there's interest in all of them. And the manager's also telling you in a press conference that we can't keep going through this, Calvin. So we're not out of this yet. We may have started to implement change and overview and stuff like this. And Andrew, I'll come to you in a business sense in a wee minute. But we're still well in this. And come the summer, there's going to be more.
Yeah, I think it's been clear. You look at just a couple of players. Like look at Matondo, how much he's offered over the past 2 or 3 seasons. It's excess of close to 30,000 per week that we're getting told. Like that's major. And for a player at our club, they need to be contributing every single week and probably be your best player on the team. When you're lucky to get 10 starts and 90 minutes in that period, it's not good enough. And that's where they probably need to look at the restructuring. The players coming down, like you said, Proper, Yefty, Igaman. They're sellable assets now, whereas these players who should have been sellable assets, you're having to recover the cost of the wages because teams weren't able to back it up. So that was the big thing in terms of the squad for me.
But there is going to be more turnover this summer.
Yeah, but there has to be. I think that's the big thing. There has to be, but it has to be a realisation for the support that is coming. And it's the only way we can get out of it. We need to bring in smarter business, players on better wages that we can look at as being sellable assets rather than being chucked out the door for next to nothing. And that was the only way we could get certain players out the door. We had to accept it, that teams weren't able to come in and afford the wage that we were having. You look at it, Goldson probably took a big drop, Cantwell, etc. And I think that's something that's probably, as you said, it's going to happen again. But at least we've got players there that can manage that off it as sellable assets at the same time now, whereas before we probably didn't.
Oh, I muted myself. It's probably for the best. But Andrew, finally come to you. And listen, I've not left you last because you're work shy or anything. That's absolutely not the accusation here, mate. I feel like we can develop this slightly. How much Andrew, is off-field issues. Edmondson House was done for the right reasons, right? The lounge is all done for the right reasons. The upgrading of the stadium in terms of access for disabled users was well overdue. They're all good decisions, arguably poorly managed, thought out, even down to the little things like Walter Smith's statue, which was a year overdue. These are things that lose trust, right? How much of those business decisions has creeped into this football club? When you consider Rangers as a turnover as big as we have, money in the door, etc., we went almost 8 months without a chairman, a CEO, a commercial director who lived in London and turned up at Ibrox once every couple of weeks. We had nobody running the place. How did we allow that to happen? How much of a detrimental effect did that have on everything, including the manager, who was basically doing everything? And what kind of, before we get to the team, Andrew, because I'm keen to talk to you about that as well, but what effect of that business model and how we've run that, why have we allowed that, and what effect has that had on the club overall?
At least you're saying the easy question to me, Stevie. I think a lot of it comes down to the context, right? This board, basically whoever's been in charge since 2015 has had a lot of credit in the bank because they took away people who were actively seeking to damage the club. If they want to dispute that, they can sue me. And since then, we've had people in who
they can sue you, not me. I'm in a room under the stairs. I'm broke, right? So
that's fine. The opinions expressed by Andrew do not necessarily reflect four lads. Yeah. My point is that board, the set of people who have been in charge since 2015, have been people who seem to genuinely have the best interests of the club at their own heart. Now, you could absolutely argue that they haven't gone about things in the best possible way. Things like Edmondson House and upgrades to the lounges, I agree, are important, but you could also say that they're poorly timed. You've kind of got to fix the roof while the sun's shining, as a former manager said. And we haven't really done that. We've instead committed to big investments that have then caused cash to be coming out of the club that could have been diverted to other things. Having to pay fees to the SFA for the use of Hamden, for instance, is a fairly big unforced error. And it comes off the back of us already committing a whole bunch of money to expanding the stadium. So I think while, all these things in isolation sound like good things, they come within the context of Rangers as a football team not being as successful as we want and need them to be. We've seen how Rangers on-field performance can directly affect that, because if we're not finishing and getting Champions League places, then that's 20 million quid that we're losing out on at the start of the season. And we have not produced a set of accounts that can really justify not having that. We should be aiming to win the league every year. One, because we should be winning the league every year. But two, because it gives you that Champions League money, the access to that, which helps the books. If you're sacrificing your on-field performance to spend money elsewhere, you end up having less money to spend. It's really as simple as that for me. And I think, and I completely agree in terms of the projects. They're good projects to do, but it's the timing thing. That's what it comes down to. And some of this has been out of the board's control. Some of it hasn't. And that's the concern for me. But as I say, I think the reason why it's been allowed to continue for so long with less fan outcry than I think you would normally get is because at the end of the day, we know that this board ostensibly have Rangers' best interests at heart. So it's difficult to begrudge someone for trying to do the best, but much like if you asked your kid to help you paint a wall, you might get upset if their progress isn't exactly what you want it to be, even if the intentions are pure.
Let's move this on slightly then, Andrew. I'll stick with you at the moment, and Kenny and Calvin, I'll come to you just as well. Outgoings this window: Alex Lowry, Rabbi Matondo, Kieran Dowell, Zach Lovelace, Adam Devine, Robbie Fraser on loan, Cole McKinnon on loan, Adam Devine also a loan of the youngsters, but Devine and McKinnon out of contract, so most likely they'll not return. Incomings, obviously, Fernandez came in. Haven't seen a lot of him as yet. I can't really judge, but we needed cover. Lyle Cameron will come in the summer. Lyle Cameron, I think I saw the manager saying of Dundee something like 27 goal involvements in 100 odd games and 1 in 4 basically. It makes sense on paper. Look, I think he looks like a reasonably good signing, and he'll probably on a better wage, and he's probably the kind of player that you would pay 30 grand a week from the Championship, which we've stopped doing. The biggest question, Andrew, then is, and people are saying this, that we are weaker coming out of the January window. And the argument being, I'm not too sure, because there's nobody on that list, in my humble opinion. Kieran Dowell and Ravi Matondo contributed absolutely nothing. Alex Lowry's a great kid, right? And I'm not going to go in on him because, and the same as Devine and the same as Robbie and Cole and Zach Lovelace, right? They're all kids. They're not first-team players. I don't see how we're weaker. I don't see how we've lost anyone that was contributing, and I don't see how we are in the slightest bit in a worse position. That's only my personal opinion. I think we had to get rid of them. By the way, I think we could have got rid of another couple and still carried on and been okay, but I don't see us being weaker. And that's been an accusation from some who are angry overall at the club for everything that's gone on, not just this window, but overall. Do you see us as being weaker at all?
I think it's that binary thing, right? We probably aren't necessarily weaker for the reasons you say. Kieran Dowell, love you, but you contributed bugger all. Ram Matondo was great in the 2 games a season we got him for, if we were lucky. That's not, we're losing him. It's not, we're being weakened by that. I think the problem that people have is that we aren't necessarily stronger after the window. And I think that's the frustration that you have there. We have, and it's a good thing to get some of these players out the door. Unfortunately, in some cases, it's just as a loan, not permanently out the door, which would have freed up more money longer term. And I think that would have unlocked the ability to spend more money in this transfer window. Because we aren't stronger after this transfer window, and we can look across the city and see, our nearest rivals who are making progress and, making their team stronger, that is going to be the frustrating part. Because I don't think it's either or. I don't think strength has gone up or down in the team because, as you say, those players weren't really contributing. Zach Lovelace is one I'm a bit annoyed about. I think, he could have been an option for the future, but you're having to justify it at that point, having 4 strikers who you're considering as first teamers if he stays. And I know Zach Lovelace had other reasons for leaving beyond just, getting a transfer. So again, like you said with Alex Lowry, don't want to go in particularly hard on him. He had not contributed a lot to the first team. So it's difficult to hold that against him. I think the worry that folk have is that we still have commitments to players who, let's say, are more injury prone, who are going to be unavailable. So this isn't the end of this process if we're talking about downsizing, restructuring, because we have still a number of players who fit those same categories who aren't actively contributing. Tom Lawrence was sitting in the stands, but I don't see him making a massive difference to us going forward. Danilo, there are definitely question marks over his fitness because he keeps getting injured. And they can be unrelated and it can be bad luck, but it's still going to be that thing where folk get frustrated with it. So we aren't weaker, completely agree with that, but we aren't stronger. And that, I think, is where the frustration comes from, because you want to be coming out of a transfer window in a better position than you were going into it. And we aren't really doing that. We've kept things stable. And given our position in the league, keeping things as they are probably isn't going to be satisfying for many Rangers fans.
Calvin, Andrew makes an interesting point there. Is that the biggest issue? We're not stronger. We haven't identified another winger. They said we were working on one, and I know we were. So in fairness, I think the Portuguese boy they discussed was the one that was closer. I don't think there was any interest in the boy that was based in Holland, Druich or something like that. Yeah. I don't think that was true in the slightest. But is that more of the issue, that we're not stronger? It doesn't matter the players that have went out because everybody can handle that, but there's been no major moves. But surely then we have to reflect on the fact that there isn't money there. Should we have done more?
As you said, I don't think there's much more they could have done. They've streamlined it down and cut out a lot of unnecessary wages at the minute. And like you said, people might be disappointed they didn't go away in transfers, but we'd have had to have let them pretty much go at that stage, giving them 6 months to potentially become an asset to somebody. I've mentioned that a few times, like Matondo going away to Germany. If he has a good 6 months, you've got a chance to recruit him something. Same with Dill, he seems to have made a good start at Birmingham. Hopefully, they've got the coffers out and they've got the big money coming out for the Americans like that. It's not a bad thing these players have went. We may not have strengthened, but we're definitely not in a worse place. And I think it's just that acceptance and realisation we had to be in this position. But look at the situation. You've now got boys like Bailey Rice that are getting a chance to come forward to the first team. Is he offering more than what Adele was? It looks like it. So are we stronger? Potentially. Just people aren't seeing it yet because the names aren't there and the transfer fees aren't there. But we're given chance to better youth that we've really been desperate to see for such a long time. So technically we could be in a better position, just people aren't happy we haven't had money to spend.
Is it then, Kenny, the lack of a big name transfer? Is that where the anger is? Without there being any context behind that, it's just a rational or irrational, I want a £4 million player. But as we've saw in the past, they don't necessarily work. Is that fair?
Yeah, well, on the face of it, it's absolutely fair. Everybody wants big signings in at the football club, Steve. It doesn't matter if you're Rangers or any other football club. Everybody wants to see in transfer windows players coming in. And you can't sugarcoat that or pretend that that's not the case. Everybody, all four of us would have liked to have seen players in, but the situation, I'll be a wee bit different for the other lads there. I actually think we're probably in a stronger position overall because, okay, you know, we're kicking the can down the road a little bit with guys like Rabbi Matondo and Kieran Dowell and stuff like that, right? But they're now in a shop window. They weren't. The manager had already explained that they were not part of Rangers' plans. They weren't going to be playing this. So if we hadn't get rid of them, we'd have been 50 odd grand worse off every single week. So in that sense, in a business sense, we're actually probably better off. Football-wise, I tend to agree with the other two boys there. That are we worse off? Probably not, because I love the look of Bailey Rice. I think he looks a proper football player. And I'd much rather see him play every single week than not be in the squad because Kieran Dowell's on 20 odd grand a week and you've got to put him in your football squad. This whole thing for me actually stems back just slightly to the very last question, Stevie, right? Where COVID hit us at the same time and we lost a lot of money that year. Steven Gerrard, we lost him shortly thereafter because he had said, basically because he felt he was going to get backed and then we didn't back him. And that is where the focus, I think, was lost because I don't know if there was a little bit of panic amongst, you know, those that run the football club in the sense that, well, what do? We can't do everything. And they've prioritised things like Edmiston House and stuff like that. Then that, you know, Gerrard leaves and then you've got to give Gio a lot of money and then you give Michael Beale a lot of money and there's no structure or, you know, cohesive plan to what we've been doing. We have that now. And whether, you know, it is going to be a tough process, this, I think, but at the same time, for the overall benefit and the long-term, you know, prosperous opportunities that we're going to have, we have to go through this. We have to get all these guys that are on exorbitant wages and not contributing enough off the books. We just need to do it, Stevie, and it's going to be tough, a bit of tough love for a long time. But for me personally, I'm looking at this window and I totally agree with what the guys are saying, that the football squad isn't any stronger, but at least we're looking at the potential that these young kids have over the next few months. And the young Finlay Curtis is another one who looks a fine player and has bagged plenty of goals over the last couple of years. So I'd much rather see these guys get a chance than a Dow or a Matondo. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Right, so let's, with you saying that, Kenny, stick here with you. What constitutes a successful end to this season? Because it's not going to be successful. We're not going to win the league. 13 points is probably insurmountable. In fact, it will be insurmountable because they're not going to collapse, unfortunately. They're too good a team. We need to accept that. How does success, the short term, end of the season. For me, Europe is a run. I'm not getting carried away with that. It would be really great to go one more round, I think, and then see where we are. That's interesting for me. You get to the quarterfinals, that could be deemed as being a successful effort. Could we go further? Take it one stage at a time. Have to win the Scottish Cup. That's non-negotiable for me. And that means beating them. But I think we've proven in the last 2 games that we can at very least, match them. What constitutes for Philippe Clement progress? That's the biggest question. How can he survive in the eyes of the fans when he's got so many doubters?
Well, the first thing he has to do is get this away form sorted right away, Stevie. The away form in the first half of the season has been pathetic, actually. It's been rotten. And Calvin's up there, away all the time watching that, and fair play to you, mate, because I'd be going ballistic watching some of that stuff. Look, what constitutes a successful second half to the season? The Scottish Cup is a certainty. I think if we don't win that, bar getting to the final of the Europa League, then it's going to be deemed an absolutely horrific season. In my mind, anyway. The away performances have to be much, much better, Stevie. As I said, the home performances have been improved of late, but even at the start of the season, we weren't particularly playing well. So for me, watching the team progress, watching the style of play, I need to see that. I need to see masses of strides taken forward, masses of improvements, and that trophy. And I'll be honest with you, out of the 4 teams we've got in the Europa League, I would be saying if we were to lose that round, I'd be really disappointed in that as well. So I'd be looking at minimum quarter-final of the Europa League and winning the Scottish Cup. It's not that simple though, is it? We know that. But at the same time, that's off the top of my head. That's what I would say. I'll let him away with it. A poor season if we could do that.
So, Andrew, all Clement has to do is blood some new first-team players in Rice and CO Curtis. He has to sort the away form, and we've got Hearts, Kelly, Celtic in our next 3, I think, away from home. Win the Scottish Cup, get us through to the quarter-final Europa League. He has to enhance Eagleman, Jeffy, Inciala, etc., and make them assets. All the meantime, he has to then get Sterling, Cortez, Dia, Danilo, etc., back fit and playing and contributing. Why is this guy staying with us? And you've got people like me moaning and consistently groaning and everything else. It's not easy, is it?
No, but I suspect as a football manager, one, he's not doing it for free. I don't want to sound particularly mercenary about it, but I've stuck out plenty of crap jobs just because I'm getting paid. So I think that's one point. But the other thing is, as a football manager, or let's say, someone who's aspiring to be a very good football manager, you want to go somewhere where you're tested. You want to be challenged. Not that I'm comparing the 2 managers, but Pep said in his book, when he went away from Real to Bayern Munich, an aspect of that was to challenge himself to see if he could duplicate what he'd done at another club and see if he could have the same success. Again, I'm not comparing the 2 managers just because they're bald. They're not all the same. I've had personal education about that kind of thing, drawing those harmful stereotypes. And I think the other thing is that if you're successful at this football club, you become a legend. And players, managers, members of staff have talked about that in the past as well. If you're successful with Rangers, at least half of the city will always love you, and you can establish more of a legacy doing that here than if you go off to Leicester City or something like that. Barring a major success there, you will just be another one in the cog, and it'll be the same thing. Because of the nature of our fan base, because of the Goldfish Bowl that is Scottish football, you can become absolutely huge reputation-wise. We've seen other managers come here, rehabilitate themselves, and go elsewhere. There's a reason why Steven Gerrard came here, because he's not getting sold on the wages. Like, Steven Gerrard doesn't need to worry about that. But he was able to come here because it was like, I know I've got a chance to build something, and it's with the same pressure that you'll get in a very top-flight team as well. You can go to a mid-league Premier League team. The same pressure isn't there. You come here, the pressure is to win every single game, which has hurt managers in the past and it's hurt players in the past as well. We've had quotes from some of our own players saying they were surprised by the level of intensity here about, a misplaced pass is bad enough. We've seen the pressure that's on players because they get less than 5 minutes to make a good impression. And if they don't make it, then, they're crap forever, never to be redeemed. So it's always going to be that thing of you want to come here because you thrive on the pressure. That's why he's staying here, because he does strike me as a kind of character who wants to prove himself. And I think he's taken some of the criticism personally, but slowly but surely there have been improvements. I think it just remains to be seen whether those improvements will outlast the patience of the fans. I think the Scottish Cup's probably non-negotiable. If the league wasn't going to be in play, at least one of the cups, because you need to have something to show. And so Leon Balogun keep his record of always winning something every season he's here. And I think, look, the Europa League, I'm not getting ahead of myself, obviously, but Bilbao Hotel, I've got a bed free. I think, that looks very eminently, we could progress quite well in that, because we've already played 4 of the potential teams that we're going to be playing throughout these leagues, like in the top 8. We know that we have the ability to do damage to these teams. And so I think progress in that, any progress is good, right? I think, as you guys say, quarterfinal looks very doable. Beyond that, I mean, it looks like it's more achievable, but I don't think European success buys you that much unless you go on and win the whole thing. That'll probably buy you quite a bit of time. But we saw from Gio that you can get Rangers to a European final. And if you can't beat St Johnstone away from home, then sorry, pal, but you're going to go. So it's a fine line, but domestic success is probably the one metric that it's going to be measured on. And, if you can do all the other things, as you said, then that's only going to stand them in good stead as well.
Calvin, quick question for you, really quickly. Hagi, Insiala, and Danilo, the 3 obvious European additions to the squad. Is that fair? I don't think Fernandes comes into it yet.
I think you're definitely looking at Hagi and Insiala. Danilo, is he going to be fit enough? That seems to be the biggest question mark, isn't it? He starts to show a little bit of something, breaks down again, and I think when it comes to Europa League, we need to have players that are available. That's the tough decision with it. If he's fit, yes. If he's not fit, we can't have him near it. Let's be honest about it. We need somebody that's going to contribute.
Okay, fair. Right. Before we go, Calvin, stick with you. Queen's Park on Sunday, what are you looking for?
A couple of young boys getting a chance to start from the game, especially like your Billy Rice. I think it's the perfect game for them, a chance. You're at home, you're expected to dominate, possibly Curtis getting a chance as well, and a dominating win. I think that's the non-negotiable. We want clean sheet, dominating win, and a couple of young boys getting a chance.
Would you, Insiala and Fernandes, for example, at the back, would you start John Souttar for 45 minutes? Would you start Bailey Rice, for example, and rest Diamande, or would you bring him on? You're looking at Igaman, Dessers, Hagi as being your Bayrami. Could he get game time? Could you rest Czerny? Czerny's so important. There's big decisions. I know it's a cup game in Queen's Park. It's at Ibrox. They'll still come and give it a real good go. How many changes do you make there? Is there risk, or is it just a case of maybe playing? You've got 5 subs, win it first, and then what's your thinking?
Still having the majority of your strongest team. Bailey Rice, the middle of the park for me. I'd like to see him get a start. I think you're still building Souttar up, so it'd be good to get him on for the start of the game, so you're hitting him early, and then you can take him off when you know he's kind of at that level. Be nice to see Fernandes get run out, but I would keep with Souttar and Ciala, and then Fernandes coming on for Souttar at half-time or 50, 60 minutes into the game. Be like Czerny, as long as somebody's able to put in the position, maybe Czerny starts, and then Curtis potentially coming on to replace later on in the game. I always think it's easier for a player to start the game if you're in the first team and somebody else to come on and create the impact.
Here's a final question. Final question. Clinton Insiala, you've seen him a lot, same as the rest of us have, but I've not had a chance to ask you. I'm excited about this boy, Calvin. And he's came right out of nowhere for me. Like, he's got the stature. He seems controlled. I think his passing is wonderful. He plays between the lines. He's got a range of ball play. I like this boy. I'm excited. I don't want to start saying anything about who he could be or that, but this boy's got potential, and I'm quite excited about this one.
Yeah, I think he's got everything you look for a centre-half, especially in Scotland. They could deal with the aerial threat. He's got pace to recover in behind. He's got a physical presence. His decision-making's very good. He knows when to attack the ball, when to sit off, and you've seen his assist against Aberdeen. His delivery's pretty good for a centre-half. So, yeah, big fan. And his passing, breaking through the lines is something we definitely need as a team that dominates the ball as much as we do. A centre-half that can play into the 10, into the strikers, much better than always just drifting it back across left and right. Me and you've discussed how many times do we hate seeing a ball going left and right for no reason. He's the type of man that's definitely taking that presence on and moving it quicker into the forward line. So, big positive for me.
Kenny, listen, I'm breaking my own rules here, but I like Big Clinton. I like him. I'm excited about this boy, probably as much as I'm excited about Hamza Eagleman at the other side, who I love watching, who's got everything for me. And do you know what? It's almost kind of funny to watch him. He's kind of huffy that he's been put out left, and he wants to be the main man up front. I love that. That's the arrogance I like. But Big Clinton, I like it, mate. He's impressed me.
When you consider he's only half a dozen games into his professional career, that this kid's only going to get better and better. He's got all the physical attributes to be a top level centre half. And as Calvin said, he's got the pace, he's got the power about him. And as again Calvin has said, the decision making has really impressed me for a young kid that's just started in the game. I'll call him Franco Baresi. I think he looks, he genuinely he's an exciting prospect, and I'm like you actually. I'd like to see him start with the two young boys, the new boy as well, Fernandez, and actually just go and give them a chance and see what they're like, because we will have John Souttar on the bench, we will have Robin Proper on the bench. There's plenty of cover there. And if by any chance one of them's having a poor game, you can hold them off and just make sure you shore it up. But I'd like to see as many as possible of the younger boys in on Sunday, probably with the exception of Hamza Eagleman, who I'd like to see get a wee rest, because he's played an awful lot of football, and you can bring him on for half an hour and he can be that huffy boy that, as you say, he's clearly not overly impressed having to play out there. He's got a wee tantrum, isn't he?
He clearly kind of thinks to himself, I'm too good to be out here. I love that. I love that kind of arrogance. So, Andrew, I'm going mental here. Let's finish it off, though. Jeffy, Eagleman, and Ciala. It's not all doom and gloom at Rangers Football Club. These are three really promising players. Look, they're not infallible, right? I get it. Jeffy at times, Eagleman, we've talked him up a lot. And Ciala will have moments. But these are three lads that... What happens if Bailey Rice comes in and has a really good few months and becomes what we think he can become? It's not all doom and gloom.
I think it fits a lot better with the strategy that we look to be going down, which is young players who are promising talents. And it's... I'm saying this knowing our fan base, but you would be a bit more forgiving over a 23-year-old misplacing a pass or, not having the best game than you would be a 33-year-old who's on 20 grand more, who you don't rate, making a mistake. And I know that's, maybe being a bit generous, but that's the idea, right? That you've got these players who you've got potential, as opposed to players who are the finished article or on the way back down again. So it's promising. We've got assets, and we look like we might be on the cusp of actually having some kind of player trading model. It'll be nice one day when it happens, but we look like we've got the good foundations for that. It's about nurturing these players and not completely ruining them, And I totally get where Kenny and Calvin are coming from in terms of bringing some of these young players in. You want to protect them to a degree as well. We know how fun Ibrox can be, if we go a goal down against a team we should be expecting to win against. So that would be my only concern about making wholesale changes. Queen's Park are 5th in their league and pushing for promotion. So it's not going to be it's not Fraserburgh, is what I'm trying to say. There's going to be an aspect of a challenge there. And I think you need to retain some of these players who are coming back to fitness. I'd probably start Souttar Insiala next to him. And then if things are going well, then you do the rotation, then you bring on the other players. We've got a week until the next game. Much as I love giving players a rest, they've just had a week, like a full week of just training and not playing a game. And that's rare. So we should be in a better position to have players slightly more rested than they normally would be playing on the weekend, because they've not had to play a European game midweek or something like that. So I'd make some changes, but not wholesale. I totally agree about Igaman as well. He's got a touch of the Morelos about him, where he expects to be the main man, and that's great. Absolutely, love that.
Impatient, grumpy fans at Ibrox, I feel attacked, honestly. So unjustified.
I mean, I don't know where I'm getting this stuff from, Stevie. You know, I'm probably just making it up, you know?
Yeah, most likely. Right, Andrew, great podcast, mate. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Of course, it was a pleasure. I love coming on and contributing to the pod and not hosting it. It's always good. It's always good.
Kenny, main man, thank you very much, mate, as always. It's been an interesting week. It always is on Four Lads. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for hosting, Stevie. It's nice not to have Andrew reigning in all our parades for a change, wasn't it? But no, that was a good show. Enjoyed that, mate. And cheers, Calvin. Cheers, Andrew.
Calvin, what do we say? Me and you have been friends for, I don't know, 10, 15 years, something absolutely ridiculous. And I think this is the first time we've properly podcasted together. Delighted to have you here, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much, mate. Enjoyed that. Good wee race back for a Thursday night. Could have been a much easier if you tried.
Yeah, some of us turned up on time, folks, and others did not. And we will not tell you who those others were. That was not me. I'm not. Well, maybe it was me. On that note, thanks to our sponsors, Rhino Express, Clydeview, Joinery, Apple Industrial Solution, CSD, Air Conditioning, Jim, Carlo, Ian. Everybody, your support is absolutely fantastic. And for our partners, Black Rooster, I had a nice wee lunch in there today, chicken and rice. It was very, very nice. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us, for subscribing, for following, for commenting, everything else. Please get your comments in. Are we downsizing? Are we restructuring? Did you enjoy the chat? Let us know. Thank you very much for joining us. We will be back on Sunday. It is Match Day Vlog. Join us for that. And then we'll be back with our podcast next week. See you all soon.
Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited and CSD Air Conditioning, along with Art of Gold. Thank you for listening or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.